Okay, so this is going to be the third exercise, word exercise 3, that we work through. We're going to take this document, which is called WO2B underscore data, which doesn't have any interesting formatting in it at all, but does have tables. And so text in tables, and that's it. We've got regular paragraph spacing, regular line spacing. The font is set to Calibri. It's set to 11 points, just like the other documents that we have been working with so far. And we're going to turn this data file into a 5-page document that has table of contents that Word is going to generate for us automatically, table of figures that Word is going to generate automatically for us. The body of the document is just 2 pages, so not an awful lot's going to change there. We've got all of this text already. Across these 2 pages, we've got all 3 of the tables. So we don't need to type anything out in this exercise. And then we're going to insert an index on the last page of our document on page 5, which Word is going to generate for us automatically. So we're going to edit these 2 pages, edit the content that already exists. Through editing that content, we're going to be able to generate the other 3 pages. In order to generate the table of contents, we're going to take the headings in this file. We're going to make these elements heading level 1. So class descriptions, spinning, Pilates, Zumba, yoga are going to be our level 1 headings. You can see that they're in bold here, as well as this one, workout tools and apps. And then we're going to take all the other headings and apply level 2 heading style to them. All of these elements in the document is everything else that's in the table of contents. And through using heading styles and heading styles alone, we'll be able to generate the first page content without having to type any of this out. Word will do it for us. And then we're going to apply captions underneath each of the 3 tables. Applying those captions allows Word to generate a table of figures for us. Other than that, there's not an awful lot going on. Format the tables with a particular style, and then if I turn show hide on, you can see that there are these very strange looking formatting tags that they're basically like paragraph markers and the dots that draw between words. They're non-printing formatting marks, so they don't really exist. But we're going to select some of these titles and tag them as index entries, and then we'll get Word to generate an index from those tags for us. We're going to use the file name field. We're going to use the page number field, and we're also going to insert section breaks in these first 2 pages so that they can be unlinked from the rest of the document. And that's going to allow us to increase the margins to 2 inches in the first 2 pages, leave it at 1 inch for the rest of the document, and to include page numbers in 2 different styles in our document. First 2 pages can have Roman numerals, and then the remaining pages can all have regular Arabic numbers. And you can't do that with regular page breaks, and so we're going to have to use section breaks in order to do that. And so a bunch of new features for us to look at. This is the file that we're going to be working with. And so it says that it wants us to open this document and then immediately save it as WO2B underscore answer. It's not a step that I'm really bothered whether you do or not, but I'm going to call it answer. And then we're going to open up the footer, and it doesn't matter which page we open up the footer from. We're going to insert the file name field. So I'll do that quite quickly. Don't need to talk through that every time now. And we're going to hit tab twice to move the insertion point to the right-hand side margin in the footer. And then we're going to insert the plain number page number field using the current position setting, exactly the same way that we did it in the previous file that we looked at. So inside the header and footer tab, I'm going to go to the insert group, document info dropdown, insert the file name field, which inserts W02B answer. And then I'm going to hit tab twice to move the insertion point to the right margin. And then in this location, in the header and footer tab, I'm going to go to the header and footer group. I'm going to go into the page number dropdown. I'm going to go back into the same menu that we used in the last document, current position, and then I'm just going to pick my page number field so that it gets inserted into the document. And then on both pages now, so we've actually now got 3 pages, we've got our page number field and we've got the file name field. So I'm going to close the header and move back to the top of the document. Before we make any other adjustments, because we're going to be making some adjustments to text, we're going to select this title and make it like a dark blue, turquoise color. We need to have access to the right colors. And right now I don't have access to the colors that I want to use. My theme colors are currently set in the design tab as Office 2013 to Office 2022. So all versions of Office that were released between those years included these colors as the main default theme. We are going to switch the color palette to one that's available in all versions of Office, which is this one that's called blue. That's going to give us access to a range of blues and green colors. And you can see that now in my font drop down, the theme colors have changed and I've got access to, that's just blue. This is turquoise accent 2, and this is turquoise accent 2 darker 25%, which is the color that we're going to apply to our title. So we're going to select the first line in the document that's going to become our title, and we're going to make some adjustments to it. We're going to make it 22 points in size. We're going to center it. We are going to make it bold, and we're going to apply that color, turquoise accent 2 darker 25%, to that title. We don't have to do the next step because it's not really important for your exams, but it irritates me a little bit that if you look at the left-hand margin, obviously all of our content in this document is left aligned apart from our title now. The title is almost big enough to stretch from the left inside margin to the right inside margin, but it's not quite big enough. It doesn't stretch just enough. There's a little bit of space that causes it to kind of undulate on the left-hand side. And so one of the options that we've got would be to change the font size. But if we increase the font size to 24, it's too big. If we increase the font size just to 23, it's too big. And if we try 22.5, that's also still too big because it pushes that line of text to 2 lines, which we don't want. That's even further away from the margins. So we're going to leave it at 22. We can keep Calibri at 22 points with bold enabled. It gets us pretty close, but not quite close enough. And so if we wanted to stretch that title so that it got a little bit closer to the margins, with it selected from the Home tab, we could go into the font dialog box, and we could switch to the Advanced tab and change the character spacing to expanded. 1 point would be far too much. 1 point, if I apply it, pushes it to 2 lines. that increases the amount of space between each of the letters that make up the words. And so it ends up being too much, pushes it to 2 lines. A setting of 0.1 is the closest we're going to be able to get before it rounds up or rounds down. But this is going to get us almost, very almost to the inside margin. Can't get any closer than that using this particular font. So we're going to leave that setting in place. That looks, the show height turned off, that looks pretty good. If you're looking at it at full page, it looks like it almost looks like it starts at the inside margin. So we're going to leave that alone. That's our heading done. And then we're going to go through our document and we're going to apply the headings that we want to be level 1 headings. So if I jump back to the answer key, where is my answer? That one. You can see that in the table of contents, class descriptions, spinning, Pilates, yoga, Zumba, and then workout tools and apps are all level 1 headings. So they're all fully outdented. And then some headings, the subheadings underneath, are indented underneath the level 1 headings. And so we achieve this by formatting some of the headings as heading style 1 in the ribbon, and some of our headings as heading style 2. And so the question lists the headings that it wants to be formatted as heading 1. And it's going to be class descriptions, spinning, Pilates, yoga, and Zumba. Now, workout tools and apps also becomes a level 1 entry in the table of contents, but we're going to achieve that a slightly different way. We're not going to apply a heading start to it. So Zumba, yoga, Pilates, spinning, and class descriptions are all going to be assigned heading style 1. So with those selected, I'm going to apply heading style 1 to them, makes them blue. If you don't like the style, we could always update it, but they do need to be level 1 headings. And then we're going to apply heading 2 style to the remaining single line paragraph headings in the document, beginning with facility overview. So this right here at the top of the first page, and then ending with Zumba toning, which is the last of the Zumbas. So there's a bunch of these to select. We've got facility overview, operating hours, beginner spinning, advanced spinning, Pilates essentials, advanced Pilates, foundational yoga, progressive yoga, and advanced yoga, Zumba Fitness Fusion, Zumba Gold, and Zumba Toning. Again, we're going to leave workout tools and apps until later. Like this. We're going to apply heading 2 to those elements. All right. So those are our headings formatted. At this point, oh no, I didn't do intermediate Pilates, heading 2. At this point, technically, we could insert a table of contents. We're not asked to insert a table of contents yet. We're going to format the tables and insert the table of contents later. But just by applying heading styles in our document, if I was to do Control End and then insert a new blank page, you don't need to do this because you're not asked to do it inside the in the instructions. If I was to insert a blank page, there must be some format in here. This has got a page break on it. Here, I would go to References, Table of Contents, and then insert like one of the standard table of contents. And anything that I had formatted with heading styles will appear. And so it tells you what page they're on. It will hyperlink to them if you hold Control, so you can jump to them. And we've got our level 1 and level 2 headings. Now I'll take it out because we don't need it. But it's just heading styles. It's how a table of contents is created. We're going to move on and format the tables. There's 3 tables in this document. And they all need to be the same style. So you're asked to select the tables, and you can use the handle to select the entire table if you want, Or you can just, if you're just applying table styles and things, and you're not making adjustments to the cells themselves, you can just make sure your insertion point is within the table. That will give you access to the table design and table layout tabs. We're going to change the visual style. So we're going to go to table design tab. And we're going to go into the table styles drop-down menu. And we're going to apply this style, grid table for accent 1. The first row is going to be formatted as a header row. So it makes it different. In this case, it put like a dark blue color in, or a darkish blue color in, and then it changed the font to white and made it bold so that it can still be read. This row of data in this table, in all three of the tables, isn't going to be a header row. So we don't want it to look like that. And so with that applied, in the table design tab, in the table style options in the top left-hand corner, there's a checkbox for header row that you can turn off. And when you do, you'll see what happens to these thumbnail previews at the top in the table styles group. And then you'll also see it happen right here in the first row of the table that I applied that style to. It changes from having a header row to not having a header row. And we don't want it to have a header row. This first column, we didn't bold. We didn't make it bold, but it is bold. And it's bold because this first column option is turned on. You can see that it affects the previews for the table styles, and it also changes on the table itself. The instructions don't ask us to turn it off, so I'm actually going to leave the first column on, but I'm going to turn the header row off. We want all three of these tables to have the same style. So grid table for accent 1 without a header row. Scroll down to the last one, position my insertion point in the last table, apply grid table for accent 1, and then just deselect the header row. And that's our tables with identical formatting. Okay, once we've formatted our tables, we're going to mark some words in our document as index entries. There's a couple of things that we need to do now. We've got enough content in our file, enough formatting to generate a table of contents with the use of heading styles. We need to insert captions underneath each of the three tables to generate a table of figures. But we're going to do that in a little while. Before we do that, we're going to generate the content in the document through formatting that we need to insert a index at the end, like an index, which is like a glossary for specialized terms. And that's going to go on page 5 ultimately. And it's generated through finding and selecting words or titles or phrases in your document, and then applying the index tag to them. So we're going to have to go through our document and select specific words and then some of the headings. And the first word that it wants us to apply an index tag to is the word nutritionist. And that exists at the bottom of this paragraph underneath the class descriptions heading on page 1. So if I select the word nutritionist in the document, if I was to go to the references tab, there's a group of tools in this tab called index. And one of the buttons is mark the selected text as an entry. So I'm going to click mark entry, and it gives me the mark index entry dialog box. Now, unlike most dialog boxes in most Office applications, this dialog box doesn't need to be closed for you to go and select other content in your document, go and make other modifications in your document. It can stay open. And so you'll see whatever word or phrase you had selected in your document, when you click mark entry from the index group, or you use the keyboard shortcut Alt Shift and X to open the mark index entry dialog box, it populates this main entry field with the text that you had selected. So this says nutritionist. I didn't type it. It's because I had it selected in the document. And I'm going to click mark to assign an index entry tag to that word. So you'll see that it puts it in after. It's almost like a citation, in-text citation field, but it's not a field with a drop-down menu. This is a tag that's entered as text into the text layer itself. It won't print, and so yes, it looks ugly, and it will move your content around. But if you turn show hide off in the ribbon, it won't actually print. It's just like a paragraph marker. It's just like the dot between words, which represents where a space has been used. It's just weird because it enters it as text and it can be selected. So that's our first word. We now need to go and select and mark as index entries some other words in this document. And so we've done the word nutritionist. We're now going to do the main headings, the headings that are going to be our level 1 headings. So spinning, Pilates, yoga, Zumba, and we're going to do workout tools and apps. Now that's not formatted as a heading, workout tools and apps. It doesn't need to be to mark it as an index entry. Neither was the word nutritionist. And so I'm going to click back within the document. I'm going to leave this mark index entry menu open and take it with me. I'm going to select the word spinning, which is the first of the headings that we need to mark. And I'm going to click back on the mark index entry menu that's floating in front of my text layer. And as soon as I do, the word that I had selected gets entered into the main entry dialog box. So I can just click mark. Then I need to do Pilates. So if I click back in the document and select Pilates, come back to the main mark index entry dialog box. As soon as you click on it, it'll update the main entry to whatever text you had selected. And then just click mark. And then just make sure that the tag actually does get inserted into the document. We're going to scroll to yoga. We'll do yoga, mark index entry, click mark, click back in the document and scroll down, select Zumba, click back on the dialog box, wait till it updates, click mark, and then we're going to do the last one, which is workout tools and apps. At the bottom of page 2, we're going to click back within the body of our document, wait until it updates the main entry dialog box, the main entry field, and we're going to click mark. Those are all our level 1 index entries. And so if it's main entry in this dialog box that's open, that means it's level 1. If it's a sub entry, that means it's level 2. So you can think of your main entries for indexes a little bit like for level 1 headings, and then sub entries as level 2 headings. It's going to create the same kind of hierarchy. All right, so we now have, I'm going to close this and I'm going to demonstrate just like I did with the table of contents. If I jump to the end of the document and was to insert a new blank page, if I go to the references tab, technically now I have enough information by marking those headings and the word nutritionist as with index tags. I have enough information to insert an index at the end of my document. So these are all level 1 entries in my index. The only difference between what's in the answer key and what I've currently got in this file is that spinning and Zumba are going to end up with level 2 entries underneath them. If I jump back to the answer key, so we almost have our entire index done already. We've got the main entries, but spinning and Zumba are going to have the different variants listed underneath as sub entries, and so these are effectively level 2 entries in an index. In order to generate the level 2 entries for our index, I'm going to undo the insertion of the index because we don't need it right now. We have to tag some of our headings for spinning and for Zumba as sub-entries, and it's a little bit of an awkward process. So the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to select beginner spinning on page 1. This is going to be a sub-entry that's listed underneath the main entry for spinning. And I'm going to click Mark Entry. So that opens up the dialog box. Now, I don't want to make a main entry for beginner spinning. I want beginner spinning to be a sub-entry, and I want it to be a sub-entry of spinning. And so I'm going to copy the value that was inserted into the main entry dialog box, and I'm going to paste it into the sub-entry dialog box. And then in the main entry dialog box, I'm going to remove the word beginner and the space that follows it, leaving just the word spinning. We already have a main entry in our index for spinning. And so it will acknowledge if this says spinning in here, and if we already have an index entry for exactly this, then it will just make beginner spinning a sub-entry of that group. So I'm going to click Mark, and you'll see that I then get beginner spinning is a sub-entry of spinning, so it's a slightly longer tag that it inserts. And I'm also going to do advanced spinning. I'm going to copy the advanced spinning text from the main entry box, and then I'm going to delete the word advanced and the space that follows it so that it leaves just the word spinning as a main entry. And now advanced spinning is going to be entered as a sub-entry, level 2, to spinning, which is going to be level 1. And we'll click Mark. So we do beginner spinning and we do advanced spinning. And then I'm going to click Close, and I'm going to move to the end of the document. So I'm going to do Control and End to jump to the end of the document. And there's one line that I could type on here, but formatting also takes up space. So if I was to insert a page break, it inserts it underneath that blank line, which ends up being the top of the next page. And then I end up with 2 blank pages, which obviously we don't want. In order to allow for a caption to be inserted in this line underneath this third table, and for the formatting mark for the page break that we need at the end of the document to also exist in that space, I need to provide more space in the actual text layer. Now, I personally would probably modify line spacing or after spacing or something to make some room. Instead, the instructions ask us to modify the size of the bottom footer in this section of the document. So this is just 1 inch. We're going to modify the footer at the bottom of this page to 0.8 of an inch, which will give us just enough room for both a caption and for the page break to exist in the text layer of this page. And so we're going to go to the Layout tab. We're going to go to the Page Setup group, and we're going to come into Margins and set a custom margin. So right now, normal margins are applied, which is 1 inch, top left, bottom and right. And I'm going to change the bottom margin to 0.8, like this. It's going to make the bottom margin of both pages slightly smaller. The rest of the margins are going to be unaffected. Click OK. Doesn't seem to have made a really big difference. But if you open up the margin now, there's going to be enough room at the bottom of this page with that minor adjustment made for both a caption and a page break formatted mark to exist. So at the bottom of this page, if I click Control Enter now, you'll see it leaves the line unaffected and it inserts the page break at the bottom of page 2 instead of pushing it to the top of page 3. We could do that because we've just narrowed the bottom margin. That has provided a little bit more space in the text layer of that page, so that these elements can exist at the bottom of page 2 without the content being pushed to page 3. At the top of page 3, we're going to type the word index, not there, the top of page 3, so here. And we're going to hit enter twice, and then we're going to insert our index page by going to references, and then in the index group, we're just going to click insert an index. And then I think we're going to use the classic template. We're going to have right aligned page numbers, and in the answer key, I think it's dashed tab leaders, but it doesn't matter really what type of tab leader you use. In the exam, in your MOS exam, if they ask you to use a specific tab leader, then obviously you're going to pick that one. But if they don't, then they don't. It's going to insert a 2-column index. We're just going to click OK. So our index looks like this right now, which is close to what we have in the answer key, but it's not perfect. We didn't do the sub-entries for Zumba, and so it's taken the content that we have introduced to the index page, and it's balanced it across the 2 columns. And unfortunately, beginner spinning, which is obviously a sub-entry of the main entry spinning, has ended up at the top of the 2nd column, and it's not with its group. And that's because of the amount of content that we've got. As soon as we introduce content or remove some content, it'll rebalance, and beginner spinning will end up back with advanced spinning. And so what we're going to do is we're going to format the title to the index, and then we're going to go and mark the 3 types of Zumba as sub-entries of Zumba. And then we're going to come back here and update the index so that it adds the Zumba content to it, the sub-entries, and it also rebalances the content that we've got, which will push beginner spinning back to the bottom of the 1st column on the left. So I'm going to format the heading the exact same way, font size 22, bold, centered, and turquoise accent to darker 25%, which is the color that I've still got applied in the font tab because we haven't picked any other colors yet. And so this is the color that was applied to the title on page 1. So now it's been applied to the index title on page 3. And then we're going to go back up to the previous page, and we're going to select Zumba Fitness Fusion. We're going to go to the References tab and click Mark Entry. And we're going to approach the sub-entries for Zumba the exact same way that we approached the sub-entries for Pilates. So I'm going to copy the text from the main entry box into the sub-entry box, and then I'm going to delete everything but the word Zumba. We already have a level 1 entry called Zumba. And so that's all the text that we need in the main entry box. And so it's going to create an index entry for Zumba Fitness Fusion that's a level 2 entry that belongs to the group Zumba. So we'll click Mark, and we'll do the same for Zumba Gold and for Zumba Toning. It's going to delete the word gold in the space. Click this. I'll click Mark, and then we'll do Zumba Toning, which is the last one. And then at that point, we can go and update our index like that. So Zumba, and then Zumba Tone is the sub-entry. Click Mark. We'll click Close and zoom out. That's all of our content marked for index. We go to the last page where the index is, click on the index to select it, and then right-click it and ask it to update this field. You're going to find that in the Zumba group here, where we've got our level 1 entry for Zumba, we're going to get 3 sub-entries, just like spinning has got 2 sub-entries, and they're going to be indented underneath, like that. We've added content to it. It rebalances the available content that it's got and tries to keep the columns, like one column from being significantly longer from the other. And because we added some stuff to the right column where Zumba is, that pushed beginner spinning back to the previous column. So then we get the index from the answer key. So we're done with the index. Page numbers in this document are good. The headings are formatted. The tables are formatted. The only thing we need to do is add captions to the tables so that we can generate a table of figures, and also then assign this heading for the third table, workout tools and apps, assign that as a level 1 entry for a table of contents. So once we've dealt with our index and we've updated it, we need to assign a level 1 table of contents entry to the heading for workout tools and apps, this table at the bottom of page 2. I'm going to select this content. In fact, I'm going to select the previous heading, which is Zumba toning. And I'm going to come to the references tab. And in the table of contents group, I'm just going to click this add text drop-down menu. And you can see that the heading that I've got selected, which is Zumba toning, is a level 2 heading. Zumba Fitness Fusion is also a level 2 heading. Zumba is a level 1 heading. If I select workout tools and apps, that heading, and open up the add text drop-down, it says do not show in the table of contents. And that's the same if I select just regular text in the document. Regular text also wouldn't show in the table of contents. What we want to do is select that heading for workout tools and apps, and then in the table of contents drop-down menu, we're going to apply a level 1 tag to it. Now it's going to change the color because it's going to become a hyperlink that can be linked to from the table of contents. It's going to change the color of the text, but it's not going to assign it a heading style. So if I click level 1, you'll see it's not as big as actual heading style 1 headings, but it did change it to blue. So now this is a level 1 heading essentially, that can be included in a table of contents without actually applying a heading style to it, just by using these levels in the add text drop down of the table of contents group. So we should now be able to insert the table of contents. So we're going to go Control plus Home to move back to the top of the document. And then I'm going to insert a section break. I'm not going to insert a page break. And the only reason I'm not going to insert a page break is because in the first 2 pages that are this is going to become page 3. In the first 2 pages that we're about to introduce to this document, I want to change the margins so that they're wider. I want them to be 2-inch margins instead of 1-inch margins on the left and the right hand side of the document. And I also want the page number fields to be Roman numerals in pages 1 and 2 for the table of contents and the table of figures. I don't want all of the page numbers in my document to be Roman numerals. I want to keep the rest of my page numbers as Arabic numbers. And so if you want 2 different styles of page numbers and you want 2 different sets of margins in your document, we need to use section breaks. So I'm going to position the insertion point right here before the title. And I'm going to go to the Layout tab. And from the Page Setup group, in the Breaks drop down, I'm going to select Section Breaks Next Page. a next page section break. Now this is going to do exactly the same thing that a page break would have done. It's going to move everything after the insertion point to the top of a new page, which would then leave a blank page at the beginning of the document, a new blank page. So it's going to do the same thing that a page break would do, but it's also going to split our document into multiple sections. You can view the sections if you've got the footer open. So right now, you can see that before we insert any section breaks into our document, in the header and footer, it gives you the header and footer label, but it also says section 1. This page is also section 1, and then the third page is also section 1. Right now, all pages in our document are the same section, which means that any global edits that are applied, content that's inserted into the footer, stuff like page number fields, margins, page color, page borders, watermarks, page size, page orientation, those kind of options that would normally apply to every single page would do, because this document is just one section. So it just flows through all of the sections. It's the same formatting. If we want different formatting in a particular part of our document, we have to use section breaks to break the document into multiple sections. And so if I go back to the top of the document and I insert a section break, layout breaks, section break. If I open up the header and footer now, we've got a blank page inserted at the beginning of the document, but the first page is now section 1. And then the rest of the document has been split from the first page and is now section 2. So all 3 of those pages that we had before we introduced a new blank page, they were all section 1. Those pages are now all section 2. But the first page that we've introduced, where we want the formatting to be different, is section 1. You'll also see in subsequent sections, it also lists a tag on the right-hand side now in the header of the second page that says same as previous. This is content and formats. Anything that's in the header, anything that's in the footer, anything that's controlled through the header and footer options, like page colors and page borders, it's going to pick up the formatting as same as previous. And we don't want that. So even though we did split the document into 2 sections, they're still currently connected. And you have the option now that we've used a section break to unlink them from one another, to break the link between them so that we can use different formatting in one section. It wouldn't get applied to the other. So this currently says same as previous in the header and the footer in the subsequent section. So if I've got my insertion point in the header of section 2, if I look at the header and footer tab, in the navigation group, there's a button that's enabled that says link to previous, and it's turned on. And so it says link to the previous section to continue using the same header or footer. And what it doesn't tell you is also the same options, such as orientation and page borders, that are controlled through the header and footer. So in the header and then the footer of section 2, I want to click that button to turn it off. That breaks the link between the header and the footer in section 1 from section 2. So now they're no longer linked. Now I no longer see that same as previous tag on the right-hand side of the header and footer of section 2. So I can close the header and footer. I've split this first page where we've got a section break from the rest of the document. And so I can make amendments such as orientation that would only then apply to that one page. They wouldn't apply to other pages. We do want it to stay portrait, so I'm not actually going to change the orientation, but now I can change the orientation of one particular section that does, and then it won't affect the rest of the document. I'm going to insert a table of contents before the section break on our new page 1. So I'm going to type table of contents, table of contents, and I'm going to hit enter twice. And then in this location, I'm going to insert a table of contents, but I'm not going to choose one of the three presets. I'm just going to insert the actual content, just like we did with the bibliography in the previous file. In the table of contents dialog box, when we open it up, we need to modify the style that's applied to the table of contents so that the first level of headings can be formatted bold. So a minor style modification. And then we want a dashed line for a tab leader. And that's it. We don't want any other changes. So I'm going to go to the references tab. And I'm going to go to the table of contents group, and I'm going to expand the table of contents drop-down menu. I'm not going to pick one of the three presets because I've just typed my own heading and I don't want it to bring a heading with it. And I'm going to pick custom table of contents at the bottom of this list. In this menu, you can see that the headings are all going to be formatted the same. And we want the level 1 headings to be formatted bold. And so I'm going to click on this modify button in the bottom right-hand corner. That's going to open up the style modification dialog box that we used to modify the style for our footnotes. You can see Verdana is applied to the entries in the table of contents, and TOC1 is selected. TOC1 is level 1 of our table of contents. So this is only going to apply to level 1 headings. TOC2 would be level 2, TOC3 would be level 3, and so on. We only want to make the first level bold. So I'm going to click this modify button, which opens up the modify style dialog box, and I'm going to click bold. And then I'm just going to close it by clicking OK to apply it. You'll see that the preview bold has now been applied. I can click OK here to go back to the table of contents menu. And sure enough, any level 1 heading that is introduced now is going to be inserted bold. We'll also give this a dashed tab leader. And I think that's it. I think we're using this table of content style. I don't think we're switching it down here. I will click OK to insert that table of contents, and all of the level 1 headings are now bold, so that's perfect. The only difference between what we've currently got as our first page in this document and what the answer key has is wider margins need to be set, and the page number field needs to be set to Roman numerals. But we've inserted our table of contents, so that looks okay. We're going to go to page 2. We'll come back and format the table of contents and table of figures page together once we've introduced the table of figures page. We're going to move to page 2, and we're going to go to our first table. We're going to apply captions for each of these 3 tables that contains the same text as the heading above them. You can get in the references tab, there's an insert caption button in a group called captions, and you could use it from here, but I prefer to use the select all button, the movement cursor for each of the tables, and then just to right click on it and access the insert caption option straight from the table itself. We're going to name these as the same title that is listed above it. So I'm going to type a colon, and then I'm going to type facility overview. And I'm going to position the caption below the table instead of above the table. You only have to make this change once, and then that option will be set to the last setting that you used every time you come into it. I'm going to click OK. That inserts the first I didn't even spell it right, but that's okay. That inserts the first caption. I'm going to do the next one will be table 2 operating hours. You don't have to use the colons, but I think it looks a little bit cleaner. Make sure it's below the selected item and then scroll to the workout tools and apps table. I'm going to right click. We're going to say insert caption. I'm going to say this is, let's call this workout tools and apps. That also has a caption, which means we can now go back to the first page of our document, not the table of contents, to the top of page 2, and we can position the insertion point before the title again, and we can insert another section break to generate a blank page before it that then comes after the table of contents page. On this page, we're going to type table of figures. See, Word trying to help out by prompting me with auto population options. So table of figures, we're going to hit enter twice. And then in the references tab, we're going to go to the captions group and we're going to say, I want to insert the table of figures, just like the table of contents. We're not going to modify any styles for this. I'm just going to change the tab leader to the dash tab leader, and then I'm going to click OK. That inserts the content that we see on our answer key for the table of figures. So now we've got all of the pages that we need. There are only 2 more adjustments to make. The first adjustment is the margins, and the second adjustment is going to be the page numbers, which we'll actually have to do separately for each page. But if I zoom back out, if we position our insertion point somewhere within the table of contents, you don't need to select the entire page, and go to the layout tab, we can switch the margins to the setting that's called wide. Top and bottom are going to remain unaffected, but the left and the right margins are going to be widened, which is going to cause the content on that page to push towards the center. So that looks pretty good. We're going to do the same thing in the table of figures page. And then we're just going to make sure that that setting doesn't copy over to the rest of the document. The rest of the document looks good. All the margins are still 1 inch. So we can do that because of these section breaks and because the sections were unlinked from one another. I actually need to unlink the header and footer of section 3, which is the rest of the document, again, because we introduced the table of contents page. We're going to go back to the table of contents page and the table of figures page, and we're going to select our page number fields, right click it, or go to the header and footer tab, page number drop down into format page numbers. I like to try and right click them and then go format page numbers. And I'm going to switch the style to Roman numerals. And then I'm just going to tell it start numbering at 1. In the table of contents page, you can leave it as continue from previous section. You don't have to force it what number to start with because there is no previous section. This is section 1. I can click OK. So we get a Roman numeral number 1 in the first page, and then in the second page, we're going to do the same thing. Change it to Roman numerals, and we shouldn't need to update the page numbering option at the bottom because we do have a previous section, and so it should just number it 2. And that is as effectively done. So we've got our table of contents page with wide margins and Roman numerals, table of figures page with wide margins and Roman numerals, and then the rest of our document is normal margins, Arabic numbers, heading styles, captions for our tables, and some words and headings have been tagged as index entries, and then we inserted an index at the end. So now we have a 5-page document that looks just like our answer key. So that's our answer key. And this is the document that we just created. And so they are effectively identical. So that's the third exercise. That's the third exercise, which brings us up to date.